All right, what's good, everybody? Come on in. It's Friday. I'm excited, aren't you? Good evening, Endgame. Nice to see you as always. Got a pretty cool show today. Let me know that you guys are alive in the chat. And let me know what you're doing this weekend. All right. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. Before we get into the meat and potatoes, please like this video. Please share this video. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done it yet. Hit that notification bell. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video or whenever I go live. Also, if you want to support my work, you can join my online community at afreshperspective.locals.com. If you want to do a one-time donation, the links are up here. And also, if you want to do a super chat, you can do a super chat anytime during this live stream. I appreciate any and everything. If you have a burning question you want to ask me or something you want to say, hit me with that super chat, and I will be sure to acknowledge it. Go ahead and turn this down or off. Also, got a couple announcements. Well, yeah, kind of announcements. But be sure to check out the interviews that I've been doing. I've done a couple this week. Especially check out my most recent one with Will Hild, the executive director of Consumers Research. It was a great interview, great conversation. I learned quite a bit. I'm going to be having him on more often because what his organization does is incredible and very, very interesting. And I'm not sure if it leans more conservative or if he just leans more conservative, but even so, the arguments that he gives really doesn't have as much to do with right or left, which is one of the things that I like about it. But definitely check that out when you get a chance. Also, right or left, which is one of the things. Also, the Solutionary Summit. Make sure you get your tickets. I'll be sure to put the link in the show notes. I thought I had, but maybe I didn't. But anyways, the Solutionary Summit, which is being put on by Maj Touré and some other people. The second annual Solutionary Summit is being held in Miami, Florida, between September 3rd and September 5th. It's going to be an awesome conference, awesome place to have some really necessary conversations. And yes, I will be on one of the panels having to do with the media, which is very important. And go ahead and get your tickets and fly on out. It'll be fun. And like I said, you'll get to meet me, which is the best part of all. I know that's what you all want. So get on out to Miami on September 3rd and the 5th and participate. Now, before I get into everything, just want to give a shout out to LibertyNation.com, which is a proud sponsor of A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles. Check out LibertyNation.com for all your conservatarian news, original articles and analysis, videos, podcasts, Liberty Nation Radio, and their signature TV program, The Conservative 5, all on LibertyNation.com, conservative news where truth matters. Now, let's see what you got going on in the chat because you guys are already talking. The boy, I'll get ahead of you. Biden's first 6 months. What the WTF is going on in this country? Yeah, I'm going to go over that in just a second. That's going to be the first topic. Yeah, it's bad. I'm going to talk about the bad, the ugly, and the good. I mean, there's some things that I can kind of say for him. Not a whole lot, but there are some, decent things that he's kind of doing. But really what I'm going to focus most on is how proficient his administration has been at implementing his agenda. So when I'm going through this, make sure you realize I'm not talking about the quality of the policies that they're pushing here. I'm talking purely about their ability to get them implemented, right? So let me go ahead and turn this off here. Okay, good. Brown Mom, I'm surprised he made it this long. He's going to make it at least until after the midterms. I do still contend that shortly after the midterm elections, he will step down. I could be wrong, but I don't think he's going to serve out his full term. The guy needs to retire already. I mean, come on. I mean, he did what he was supposed to do. He got into office. He got Trump out of office. Let's see. Wait, nice shirt. Thank you. This is the way. All right. So let's go ahead and light this candle. So the article that I'm going to be quoting from is in the show notes. It's from libertynation.com, which I just mentioned. And it was written by James Fight. He's one of the editors there. Really good guy, good friend of mine. And he did an article about the first 6 months of Joe Biden. And I thought his article and his analysis was spot on. So be sure to read it, because I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I'm just going to hit some of the salient points. And I think that a lot of you will agree with what he's saying, unless you happen to be a Democrat, then you'll agree with none of it, which is okay. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. So Jim starts out, he says, quote, "Thus far, Biden has signed 22 bills into law, and few are major legislative victories." And then he asks, how does that stack up compared to other presidents? So he kind of gives a breakdown. So President Franklin Roosevelt, he had signed 76 bills into law. Again, I'm not saying whether that's good or bad. I'm just saying I'm talking about performance. So Roosevelt signed 76 bills into law within his first 6 months. Harry Truman had 55. Donald Trump had 28. Bill Clinton had 24. So Biden is just a little bit below Bill Clinton. So he hasn't gotten much through Congress. And there's some reasons for that, and we'll talk about it. However, Jim does give him a little bit of credit, because he says, quote, "Of the laws signed so far, 5 relate to his COVID-19 recovery plan, and four of those pieces of legislation enjoyed broad bipartisan support." And then there's Juneteenth. So Biden will always be remembered as the president who signed the federal holiday into law, which is another bipartisan endeavor. They didn't want to let Trump have that one, because we know that Trump would have signed it. Even the people who don't like him, they won't admit it, but they know that Trump would have signed that into law. But Biden will get the credit for it, and so he deserves it. Fine. Good. Now, that's kind of where a lot of the good stuff ends, because there's not much more. And I'll talk about some other stuff, too, in a second. But Jim also talks about the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. And the Democrats did get that through, but not through bipartisanship. It was passed using the reconciliation process so that they can get around the filibuster. And of course, this wasn't very good for people like Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, who weren't very much on board with it, but it got through. So that it counts as an accomplishment, but it's kind of not as much of an accomplishment, because they had to do that along party lines. They weren't able to get any Republicans on board with it. Now, a lot of people will say, well, that's because our Republicans are obstructionists. Yeah, sometimes that's true, actually. Sometimes it is. And sometimes I like it. When it comes to bad bills, yeah, I want the Republicans to obstruct. I do get under cases for never coming to the table with their own solutions, but stopping a bad bill is also good. And we've already seen that some of these initiatives did have bipartisan support. So it is possible, even with Republicans in 2021. So using the Republicans isn't that big. It's not a great excuse. I mean, if you have control of both chambers of Congress, you should be able to get some stuff passed. You should be able to present things in a way that will get at least some support from Republicans. Now, James talks about the COVID-19 pandemic and the effort to get the public vaccinated. And he acknowledges, quote, "The Biden administration hasn't completely failed in its endeavor to vaccinate the public. Despite none of the COVID-19 vaccines actually being FDA approved yet, around half the nation's adult population is believed to have taken the jab. That's no small feat, and Biden does get to claim some credit here." And Jim is right. He does get to claim some credit. I mean, they've done, Trump built up the infrastructure, got the program going, and Biden hasn't jacked it up. And he's actually been pretty effective at getting some of this stuff done. But he did fail his goal, which was supposed to get 70% of Americans vaccinated by the 4th of July. And again, I'm not talking about opinions on the vaccination, whether you're for it or against it. That's not relevant to what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about performance. Now, here's the issue. While he has done a decent job of getting that vaccine out, he's hitting some roadblocks, especially over the past few weeks. It's slowing down. Fewer people are getting vaccinated at the same rate as they were earlier this year. And this has caused the Biden administration and the Democratic Party to act stupid and scary as far as being authoritarian. They're talking about having vaccines be mandatory, which is the next thing I'm going to talk about after I'm done here. But since they're failing at this point, because up to this point they were doing well, but there's some failure starting to happen here. Now, not only are they proposing authoritarian proposals, they're also passing the blame for it. See, at this point, Biden can't blame Trump anymore. Because remember when he first got to the Oval Office, they said, oh, well, there was no plan to get any of these vaccines out there. Like they straight up lied about it and the media helped them. But then later on, Fauci even admitted, no, Trump's administration had some stuff in place and they had a blueprint to follow. So they had to lie about it at first, but now it's 6 months in. You can't blame this on Trump anymore. Like nobody's going to take that seriously, including the people who want to take it seriously. So he writes, quote, the administration has even gone so far as meeting with popular social media influencers and platforms to spread the approved message and flag, quote, problematic posts on Facebook, signaling the company to take action against what the White House calls dangerous misinformation. And you remember Biden said that Facebook was killing people with this stuff because they weren't censoring enough. And what they don't want to say outright is that they're not suppressing enough conservative opinions on the coronavirus and the vaccine. And he did have to walk back his statement about killing people, but still, they've been feuding over the past couple of weeks, especially last week. They were going at it. And White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki even said, yeah, we're monitoring posts and we're flagging them and we're sending them to Facebook and asking them to remove them. The government is pressuring a private company to engage in censorship, particularly politically motivated censorship, under the guise of dealing with, quote, misinformation. It's so bad that even the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, criticized the Biden administration. Now, the ACLU, I mean, they tend to lean left, but sometimes they get it right. I mean, there are a lot of times when they will get it right when it comes to defending civil liberties. And it's interesting because in the tweet that they posted, they had a whole thread of presidents and the government giving misinformation about certain issues. So they're saying you're cracking down on Facebook for misinformation, but this doesn't necessarily mean that the government always has the right information either. Sometimes the government messes up royally. Sometimes they just lie. So yeah, you're saying that there's misinformation being spread on Facebook, and I believe that. I'm sure there are people out there posting BS. Like we know what world we live in right now, right? This doesn't mean that the government is always right. And the idea that they would pressure a private company to censor content that is not Democrat approved, that's scary. So it's not just so much that they're failing, it's that they're responding to it in a way that's more destructive. And in my opinion, destructive to their chances of winning in 2022 and 2024. This is all going to come back to bite them in the ass, and they deserve it. Now, as far as the economy, it's not going so well. I mean, some things are looking up, like the jobless numbers are going down, especially since a lot of states have canceled the enhanced federal unemployment benefits. So now people are going back to work. I mean, it was obvious to anybody. Mr. Magoo could see that people weren't going to work because they were being paid to stay home. That's not the only reason. That's not the only contributor, which I've said, but it is one of the primary contributors to the fact that the jobless rate was so high. And the small businesses who need workers weren't getting them because these people were making more money to stay home. So in these states, which I've written about and I've talked about on this channel, a lot of the states who canceled, pretty much all of the states who canceled those enhanced benefits are seeing their jobless numbers go down. So that's a good thing. Although Biden doesn't really get a whole lot of credit for that, right? And of course, inflation is an issue, and people are concerned about it. And this is happening on his watch. So the Fed is saying that, it's temporary, but, we'll believe that when we see it, right? But then along with that, you have the migrant crisis. We can't forget about that. And next week, I'm going to be talking even further about how this is hurting his chances of winning in 2024, if I'm wrong and he makes it to the end. Or even if he isn't running, if Kamala Harris is in charge and runs in 2024, she will lose because of this. I fully believe this, especially if it continues. If they don't do something about this right now and start turning this around, they're going to lose. Because there was a recent study that came out, I think it was yesterday or the day before, indicating that voters, Republicans and Democrats, believe that Republican lawmakers in Congress, and this is in battleground states, by the way, guys. They took a poll of people in battleground states, and people in battleground states believe that Republicans would handle the migrant crisis in Congress much more effectively than the Democrats would. But I'll dive into that next time. But this isn't looking good for him. This is yet another failure. Now, here's the thing. One of the good things that he's doing that I like is getting troops out of Afghanistan. Like, he's ending that war. Now, he hasn't done it yet, so I'm going to reserve my praise until it's actually done. But I've said publicly, when that last soldier hits U.S. soil, I will write a piece praising him for doing it. I'll even talk about it on video. I will sing his praises, because Trump wasn't able to accomplish this. He wanted to, and he tried. He drew down the numbers, but he wasn't able to finish the job. So if Biden can finish the job, he deserves all the credit in the world, and I will shower it on him. Doesn't mean I'll support him in other stuff, but I've been trying to look for areas of positivity with this administration, and I haven't been able to find much. But I just talked about some of it here and what could happen later. We don't need to be in Afghanistan anymore. There's no good reason for that. So this is kind of my summation of his first 6 months. It's a lot of failures. And the thing is, he has a lot of ambitious objectives. If he didn't have those, then I'd be like, okay, well, there's really no issue here. But he wants to push through a radical gun agenda. He wants to pass $80 million spending bill. I can't remember how much it is. It's a lot, though. He wants to push that through. There are other things that he wants to do to grow the size of the government, and it's just not working. That's why the Democrats want to get rid of the filibuster. It's not because they think the filibuster is a bad thing. They used it over 300 times last year. It's because it's preventing them from doing what they want. It's preventing them from getting their agenda through. So what do you guys think? Because if this administration, and the Democrats too, not just Biden, I'm talking about congressional lawmakers as well, if they were performing up to par, there'd be no need to get rid of the filibuster, right? Let's see what we got here. Oh my gosh. Imagine how much worse Biden would be if he didn't have to mention. So, that's just wrong. That's wrong. Give me a second here and I'll move on. Let's see. I'm just going to share this thing again. Okay. So next, I want to talk about mandatory vaccines. That's always fun, isn't it? I'm just going to check to see where we are time-wise. Okay. So mandatory vaccines, you've probably heard Democrats pushing for this. And it's not just Democrat lawmakers and politicians. It's people on the left in general. You've got the activist media pushing for mandatory vaccines. You've got high-profile left-wing influencers who are pushing for this as well. So this is something that they want to make happen. Dr. Fauci even came out and said that he would support vaccine mandates at the local level. The Biden administration has also indicated that they would support such a move on the part of municipalities and cities and all that good stuff. And there are some cities that are creeping towards it. And I think they want to do it here in Austin, but I don't think that they have the balls to try it. Because I'll go before I get into it. If you saw me on Twitter, you saw me complaining about this already. But let's see if I can find the text message. They were texting me today, and they texted me 3 times, twice in English, once in Spanish, talking about, this is Austin Public Health, and since the COVID-19 pandemic is rapidly increasing in Austin, we need you to people to stay home as much as possible. They want us wearing masks indoors, at home, or wherever we go, even if we're vaccinated. They want us wearing masks. Now, these aren't mandates; these are suggestions, so people don't have to comply with it. But for them to text my phone, and then they called me. They called me with the recording saying basically the same thing, and that wear your mask or we're all going to die. That was basically the message. And here's my thing. The COVID numbers are going up as far as infections go. What they're not telling you is that deaths are still going down. So people are getting it at an increased rate, but people aren't dying from it. So what they're trying to do is they want to basically bring us back to where we were earlier this year and last year. They want the lockdown orders back in place. I think California already did it. Other states are looking at that too. But I think there's going to be a huge backlash. And it's going to be in California and elsewhere. And here's why. Despite the fact that they're working overtime, I mean, you've got CNN, the New York Times, Washington Post publishing op-eds telling their audience to support vaccine mandates. And and nobody is on board with this. It doesn't mean that Americans are against getting vaccinated. They believe it's a personal choice. So the Trafalgar Group released the results of a poll earlier this week, revealing that the vast majority of Americans reject mandatory vaccines. And I'm not exaggerating. I mean the vast majority. So when the respondents were asked if they believe that, quote, taking COVID vaccines should be mandatory or be a matter of personal choice, 71.4% said it should be a personal choice. 21.8% agreed with the idea that vaccines should be mandatory, and about 6.8% stated that they were unsure. So you've got an overwhelming majority saying, nope, no mandatory vaccines. You can take that somewhere else. But here's where it gets even more interesting. When you break it down along party lines, it's still the majority of people being against it. Among Democrats, 58.7% said that taking the vaccine should be a personal choice. So almost 60% of Democrats. Of course, 87.3% of Republicans said the same thing. So the bottom line is that, to put it frankly, people are sick of this shit. They're sick of it. Like there were other studies, like it was last week and the week before, saying that even though this Delta variant is about, they still don't want to change what's going on right now. They don't want to go back to lockdowns. And again, this is Republicans and Democrats. They said they don't want the government to take any extra steps. People can do this on their own. They can make the right decision for themselves. They believe that it should be a personal choice, which, by the way, I do too. Because honestly, both sides of the vax debate are getting on my damn nerves. I can't stand either of them at this point. Not everybody. I'm talking about the people on the fringes who want us afraid. Anybody who tries to manipulate by fear, even if it's the right thing, they're trash to me. I mean, you've got people trying to terrify you into not taking the vaccine, like you're going to die if you take it. The survival rate of the vaccine is probably even better than it is on COVID. And they always say, oh, well, COVID has a 98% survival rate. Well, so does the vaccine, or the vaccine has even a better rate, and you're trying to scare people into not taking it. But then on the other side, you have people saying, if you don't take it, you're going to die, right? Both sides want you to believe you're going to die if you don't do what they say that they want you to do. It's disgusting. It should be a personal choice. I got an email from a lady last week. I believe she said she was 80 years old. She chose not to take it, but she lives alone. She has some other health issues that might make the vaccine dangerous for her because she has had issues with other vaccines in the past. And when she does go out, she makes sure that she goes when there's not a lot of people at the store, and so that she's not spreading it. She does practice social distancing. And I'm like, okay, that's a personal choice. If she wants to take the risk of going out, then that's on her. Because, I mean, her age group is more susceptible to it. But again, if she's not going out that much and she lives alone and she has issues with the vaccine might even be more dangerous than the vaccine. So it just depends on who you are. If somebody is younger and healthy, they may not have to worry about it as much. If somebody has morbidities or other underlying conditions, then they might want to take it. These are things that people should talk about to their doctors and make their own decisions. They shouldn't be listening to Tucker Carlson, who wants you to think you're going to die if you get the vax. They shouldn't be listening to Fauci, who says you're going to die if you don't take it. Go to your doctor, see what he says, given your situation, and do what you feel is right. And you know what? Anybody who agrees with that, you're in the 71.4% who also agrees with that. But here's another thing that I got from this story. Very interesting. And I want to see what you guys think about this. The results of this poll were pretty encouraging because you got people on the right and the left stating that they don't want the government to get more involved in their lives, right? Well, regardless of what they feel about the vaccination, they don't want the government to be able to force them to put something into their body that they don't want to, especially if they're not sure that this substance is good for them. And like I said, it might make sense for some to not take it, depending on their age and health, but everybody knows this, which is why everybody knows that this should be a matter of personal choice. So this tells me maybe America isn't too far gone yet. Maybe we're not so willing to allow daddy government to assert his will over us. That's encouraging. What do you guys think? All right. Oh, froze there. Okay. All right. Cases going up slightly here in El Paso, almost entirely young people, hospital stable. See? And younger people are less likely to die from this illness. They get through it fine for the most part. I don't think people understand what will happen if another lockdown is instituted. Well, you might be right. I do think if they push this harder than what they're doing right now, there will be a backlash. I'm not saying it'll be violent. I don't know, but I think people are tired of it. Let's see. Be still, peace. Ain't gonna happen in Texas, Captain. My body, my choice. Oh, excuse me. They're being so pushy, it's scary. Yeah, I mean, for me to get those messages back to back and then get called like less than a half an hour later, excuse me, it's absurd. Oh, man. All right. So ready to move on, but first, I want to remind you to head on over to libertynation.com, a proud sponsor of A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles. You can sign up for the daily briefing or subscribe to the member zone, or just check out the latest cutting-edge conservative news and analysis with none of the spin and all the nuance. Check out new and original material on libertynation.com, conservative news where truth matters. Now, let's talk about the KKK. That's always a fun topic, isn't it? I won't talk as long for this one because it's pretty straightforward. But you might have heard the bust of Nathan Bedford Forrest was removed from the Tennessee Capitol, or I think, yeah, it was in the Capitol building. And it's going to be put in a museum. And most people were okay with it, but some were not. And that's what I'm going to talk about. Nathan Bedford Forrest, he was one of the founding members of the KKK. He was, I believe, the first Grand Wizard and did a lot of horrible things. Wait, where did my information go away? 1 second. Perfect. Okay. So this was a culmination of years and years of debate on this issue and protest and all that good stuff. And they started removing it on Friday morning today, like I said. And they're also moving some other busts too. Now, what's interesting, what I thought was interesting is that the bust weighs about 3,000 pounds. Like, how big is this thing? It didn't look that big, but yeah, it's 3,000 pounds. And they had to like bring in some crazy machinery to move it. Like really heavy duty stuff. Cost 17 grand to move all 3 statues. And of course, the State Museum is covering it. And the first calls to remove it came in 1973. So this has been going on for 50 years, about almost 50 years. This debate has been going on. And oh, actually, I didn't say that right. They've been going on since 1973 when the bust was first put into the Capitol building. So even when it was put in, people, wanted it out. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of the history of it. I'm going to go into the kind of the debate over it, which, by the way, I don't think that most people will agree with what I'm going to bring up here. Let me go ahead and share. Give me 1 second. Okay. There's a tweet by, I believe, the Lieutenant Governor of Tennessee. His name is Randy McNally. Okay, so hopefully you can see that okay. Now, he did a whole thread on this. This is obviously before they actually removed it. And he starts out, my position on the bust of Nathan Bedford Forrest has been clear and consistent over a number of years. I believe that context is needed, but not removal. No one is arguing that Forrest is not a problematic figure. He is, but there is more to his story. He's right, there is more to his story. I don't care. I don't care. His life eventually followed a redemptive arc, which I hope is outlined in detail in our state museum. No figure honored on Capitol grounds or across the state could stand up to modern scrutiny. I'll get to that in a second. Without historical context, we would have no Tennessee heroes, only villains, no Christian saints, only sinners. The left-wing activists who are pushing an anti-American, anti-history agenda here in Tennessee and across the nation will not stop with Nathan Bedford Forrest. So it's that argument. Don't remove this because if you remove this, then they'll go after everybody else. Well, they're going to do that anyway. I mean, come on. They're going to do that anyway. It's not a reason to defend a member of the KKK. I mean, God. The woke mob means ultimately to uproot and discard not just Southern symbols, but American heroes in history as well. This is not the end. This is the beginning. I don't disagree. I mean, you saw Antifa and a lot of the hard left wanting to remove George Washington, even Abraham Lincoln, yada, yada, yada. But here's the thing. Nathan Bedford Forrest is not a freaking American hero. He is not a good icon. Like with George Washington and people like Thomas Jefferson and some of the others, you might have some arguments there because along with the evil things that they did, owning slaves, stuff like that, they also did great things. They founded this nation, which is the greatest nation on earth. So you can have that argument, but you can't have that argument about Nathan Bedford Forrest. This isn't like a complicated type of figure in American history. He did evil shit. That's it. There's not much nuance there. And like he said, I mean, there is a redemption arc here, and I'll talk a little bit about that just so that you guys know about it. But going to the last part of this thread, the left will move on to the next figure or monument and demand that we again kneel at the altar of political correctness. While the governor and the constitutional officers did not stand with me today, I hope they will next time because more fights are coming. Yeah, this is absurd. And they always use this particular argument to defend horrible people. Nathan Bedford Forrest was a horrible person. There is no reason why he should be in a position of honor. Put that thing in a museum. This is where I'm okay with it. Like when it comes to Confederate generals, I'm more agnostic on it because honestly, I don't care. If they take him down, fine. If they leave him up, fine. I don't care. Like that's not affecting me. That's not affecting anybody. I do lean towards taking them down because they rebelled against the United States of America. They killed people carrying the American flag that we still hold as our symbol to this day. So I'm not a fan of them. But to me, that's not one of the biggest issues that we need to be dealing with today. So again, if they take them down, great. Put them in a museum. I don't want to forget history. So don't discard them. Put them in a museum so that people can take their kids and see these are the people who fought to preserve slavery. And this is how the Civil War worked out, yada, 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 whatever you want to, teach your kids. But again, Forrest is a different animal. Now, I'm going to be fair and I'm going to go over his supposed, or I shouldn't say supposed, his redemption arc. And I didn't really want to dig too deeply into this, so I just went to Wikipedia. Yeah, I know you're not supposed to do that. I would never quote this in an article, but I don't mind, messing with it here. Where'd it go? Okay. Later in his life, in 1975, because he died in 1875, because he died in 1877. But in 1875, he started to come around. He changed a lot of his views. In his last public appearance, he made a speech talking about how they need to make things right with Black America and to do things to improve the economic standing of Black Americans. And supposedly, while he was making the speech, there was a young Black woman who offered him a bouquet of flowers, and he accepted them, could give her a kiss on the cheek, and yada, yada, yada. So sounds like he changed at least most of his views on slavery and on Black Americans. Does not erase what he did, though. He changed his mind, great. I mean, there are a lot of people who believe in that stuff, and then they changed their minds later. But this alone is not enough to celebrate the guy. We can acknowledge, okay, he changed his mind. He repudiated a lot of what he used to believe. Great, good. We don't still need to honor him as if he's some type of hero. So I agree with this move. And I honestly think that Randy McNally isn't making a very good argument here. The fact that the left is going to continue to try to take down statues is not a good enough argument, because even if you leave this up, they're still going to do it. So you think that you're winning a victory by having a member of the KKK being venerated in your state's capital? Come on. It's absurd. And I will say what I always say. This is why we lose. And a lot of times, this is why we deserve to lose. I talk about the Black community and why they vote for Democrats at 90%. This is why. This is one of the reasons why. We will be so stupid that we will defend stuff like this with a straight face and get indignant about it. No, we don't need to defend these people. Why would any Republican want to honor the history of the Democratic Party? Because it wasn't the Republicans who were doing this stuff. I'm not saying that there weren't racist Republicans, but this isn't our history. This is the Democrats' history. So there's no reason to venerate this. There's no reason to honor it. I'm not a fan of the Confederate flag. People have the right to fly it. And I will say I don't believe that everybody who flies a Confederate flag is a racist. I know they do it for different reasons. You're never going to get me on board with that, though. I'm sorry, that's a symbol of the oppression of my ancestors. And to me, it's like when people are so emotional about it and they act like people who are against it don't have any valid points. Again, Black people look at that and they're like, well, why would I want to come over there where they want to honor people who enslaved my ancestors? Like, what? It's absurd. We need to move past this, guys. Like, there's no good reason for this. People want to fly their Confederate flag, fine. But this is not something that we need to be. This is not the hill that we need to die on. It's not even close to being the hill that we need to die on. We need to be willing to move into the 21st century and kind of get past a lot of this stuff. We always talk about how the left wants to bring us back, right? And they always want to focus on the past. They want to hyper focus on the oppression that happened. But then we're doing the same thing, just in a way that's a lot dumber than what the left is doing. So maybe we should reconsider some of our attitudes about these things. Not everything is worth conserving. Being a conservative doesn't mean you conserve everything. You conserve what is worth conserving, the values, the principles upon which this nation was founded, even though it hasn't lived up to them yet. As a matter of fact, this nation will never live up to the values upon which it was founded, because those were very lofty ideals. No country can live up to those values. But the idea is that we work every day to get closer to that, right? We work every day to get closer to a more perfect union. So, yeah, see right here, David Gray. Forrest also presided over the massacre at Fort Pillow. Yeah, let's give this guy a bus in the Capitol building. I mean, this is common sense. I shouldn't have to say this. This isn't hard. And again, I'm going to be fair. I don't think that most Republicans are opposed to this. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that most Republicans are opposed to this. There would have been Republicans in that legislature that voted to remove the bust. So I'm not picking on all Republicans, and I'm not making this sound like this is like some widespread sentiment on the right, because it's not. But it's loud enough for me to have to say something about it. So yeah, so with that, I think I'm going to sign off. I'm ready for the weekend. I know you guys are too. But thanks again for showing up. Thanks again for watching. Be sure to share this video. Be sure to like this video. That helps me a lot with the algorithms. Also, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. And until next time, keep your minds free.